The first audience member asks, when is someone generally considered to be postmenopausal, and how are hot flashes related to that entire menopause cycle?
Okay. Technically, you're menopausal, postmenopausal when it's been a year since your last menstrual period. So it's a retrospective diagnosis. You just don't know until, and you may go 5, 6, 7, 8 months and then get periods again for 3 or 4 months. But when you've been a year without a period, then it's likely that you won't have any more. And that's a time when the vast majority of your eggs are depleted. There may be a few that didn't get asked to dance for a reason, and they may pop up in the next year or so, but generally that's what there is. During the time preceding that, usually 6 months to 2 years prior to that, there's up and down levels of estrogen. There's nothing really, predictable. And so that up and downness of the estrogen is what causes all the fun things that happen during that time, the hot flashes specifically, and the night sweats. There are all kinds of proposed mechanisms by which this can happen, and many of them are way beyond even me understanding them. But the bottom line is, during that transition, people will get these hot, flashes. That's a misnomer. It's not a flash. Your body is seized with heat. Someone sitting next to you can feel it coming. You break out in sweats. You literally want to rip off your clothes and stand naked in front of an open freezer door. Not everybody gets those, or to that extreme. And then the night sweats, which more people than not get, where you just wake up in the middle of the night and your sheets are wet. I don't know the evolutionary advantage to that. I'll have to ask the gods one day if they give me the opportunity to do so, but it's pretty miserable. But eventually all of that evens out and you're at a steady state of just very low estrogen. And that's usually not associated with hot flashes and night sweats, though some of us still get them in their 60s, 70s. I have a couple of 80-year-olds who are still getting them, but most people get over it within 6 to 12 months. And then there is the ongoing problem of what happens to your body with little or no estrogen, which results in vaginal dryness and osteoporosis and cardiovascular disease. So there's a lot.
Yeah, our next question was actually on that topic. Someone was asking about, they asked what's the latest on estrogen and menopause. So I think they're probably asking about, supplemental estrogen during that time in your life, and how can we protect our bone health to delay osteoporosis and bone density loss? Sure.
I'll give you a long segue into it and then a short answer to the other one. But back when I first started practicing obstetrics and gynecology, pretty much most women got hormone replacement therapy when they went into menopause. At the time, it was something called Premarin, which was made from pregnant mare's urine. Not sure why they were playing with pregnant mare's urine, but they contain a lot of different estrogens, and the body breaks them down into estradiol, which is the form that's needed to get into the cells. And initially, they just gave estrogen. And then they noted that there was an increased incidence of uterine cancer in these women 5 to 10 years later. So then they added progesterone, which your body normally makes when you ovulate. And then not only was the risk for uterine cancer not increased, it was actually less than if you took no medication at all. It took away the hot flashes and night sweats, period, end of discussion. It delayed the start of bone loss, which happens once you run out of estrogen. Men have testosterone to protect them. Women run out of estrogen, and starting at menopause, their bone mineral density starts to go down. It also delayed the onset of elevated cholesterol, which happens in women once they go through menopause. Prior to menopause, women have a much lower risk of heart disease than men. But once menopause comes through and they run out of estrogen, that risk starts to go up, so that after 7 or 8 or 9 years, women's risk for heart disease is the same as men's. So it was the panacea. Oh, and it helps with vaginal dryness. So it was a panacea. Well, why not? You get rid of your hot flashes, you protect your body from heart disease, osteoporosis, and vaginal dryness, so you can continue to be sexually active. And so there was this long-term project called the WHI. I know this might be too much information, but that's part of the history, Women's Health Initiative in the 90s, I think, where they were trying to show that estrogen should be used for a primary preventive measure against heart disease. And so they ran the study only with the Premarin products. And it turns out everything that we thought we knew was true. It did prevent osteoporosis. It did delay the onset of high cholesterol. It did take care of hot flashes. It does, if used for 5 years or more, increase statistically, but a small amount, your risk for breast cancer. But the study wasn't stopped for that reason. The study was stopped because in order to get into the study, you had to be symptom-free. And so by default, most of the people in the study were in their 60s and had already developed heart disease or high cholesterol or whatever else. And so it wasn't the normal audience that would have been put on hormones in their 50s. And there were a lot more smokers in the study. So there wasn't a decrease in heart disease. So they stopped the study saying simply that estrogen should not be used for the primary prevention of heart disease. They didn't stop it because they thought estrogen was dangerous, okay? But then for years, people went around saying, bad, bad, don't take any estrogen. But what we've come to see now that we have all the statins for high cholesterol and blood pressure medicines and things, and great medicines for osteoporosis, that in most cases, you really just need the estrogen for the temporary hot flashes and night sweats. And that's usually done within 5 years. So your risk for breast cancer doesn't really go up. And we can use vaginal estrogen for vaginal dryness after the menopause, and that doesn't get into your bloodstream. For the osteoporosis, your peak bone mass is when you're in your 30s. And the test that measures your bone density compares everybody to a 30-year-old woman, which doesn't sound fair, but 30-year-old women are healthy. And so there's a negative value that goes the further away you get from a 30-year-old woman. At menopause, most people are either even or mildly minus, but then the slope of the line starts to go way down, and genetic predisposition, lifestyle, and things play into that. Smokers, for instance, lose bone faster. Blonde hair, blue-eyed Northern Europeans lose it faster. Family history, obviously, you lose it faster. And so by 65, there are many people who've gone from mild bone loss, which is called osteopenia, to osteoporosis, which is where you're at increased risk for fracture. If you take hormone replacement therapy, that likely won't happen. But then that's stimulating your breast and doing other things. There's some great medicines on the market now that only support the bone, and that's usually what people will use now. In addition, regular weight-bearing exercise, 3 to 5 times a week for about 20 minutes. Swimming is a great exercise, but it doesn't bear weight, so it doesn't help with that. It's great exercise, so don't stop if you do it, but that's not the only thing. 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day is required postmenopausally. It's 1,000 milligrams before menopause, so you just absorb it less after that. And so unless you do dairy products or plant-based milks, it would take 12 cups of broccoli a day, or 1/2 pound of parsley, or a can of sardines every day to get that 1,200 milligrams. So if you don't do those other things, then supplementing whatever you don't get with calcium, with vitamin D in it, because vitamin D helps absorb the calcium.